The Battle of Iwo Jima, a pivotal clash in the Pacific theater of World War II. The Battle of Iwo Jima, fought between February 19 and March 26, 1945, stands as one of the most iconic and brutal engagements of World War II. This pivotal battle between the United States and the Empire of Japan was a critical moment in the Pacific theater, symbolizing the ferocity of the conflict and the high cost of victory. The battle, which resulted in the capture of the island by U.S. forces, was marked by intense fighting, heavy casualties, and an enduring legacy that continues to resonate in military history and popular culture. Background: the strategic importance of Iwo Jima. Iwo Jima, a small volcanic island located approximately 760 miles south of Tokyo, held immense strategic value for both the United States and Japan. For the U.S., capturing the island was essential to the broader strategy of advancing toward the Japanese mainland. Iwo Jima's airfields could serve as a critical base for American bombers, providing a staging point for raids on Japan and a safe haven for damaged aircraft returning from missions. For Japan, the island was a vital outpost in its defensive perimeter, and its loss would bring the Allies dangerously close to the homeland. The Japanese military, under the command of General Tadamaki Korebayashi, had heavily fortified the island in anticipation of an American invasion. Recognizing that they could not win a traditional battle, the Japanese focused on a strategy of attrition, constructing an extensive network of tunnels, bunkers, and hidden artillery positions. Their goal was to inflict maximum casualties on the invading forces and delay the American advance for as long as possible. The invasion, Operation Detachment. On February 19, 1945, the U.S. launched Operation Detachment, the codename for the invasion of Iwo Jima. The assault began with a massive naval and aerial bombardment, intended to soften Japanese defenses. However, the island's rugged terrain and the Japanese forces' deeply entrenched positions limited the effectiveness of the bombardment. At 8:59 a.m., the first wave of U.S. Marines landed on the beaches of Iwo Jima. They were met with fierce resistance from the moment they set foot on the black volcanic sand. The Japanese, hidden in their fortified positions, unleashed a barrage of artillery, machine gun fire, and mortars. The soft ashen steep terrain made it difficult for the Marines to advance, and casualties mounted rapidly. Despite the heavy opposition, the Marines pressed forward, inching their way across the island. The fighting was relentless and often hand-to-hand, as the Japanese defenders fought tenaciously from their underground fortifications. The battle quickly became a grueling test of endurance, courage, and determination for both sides. The flag raising on Mount Suribachi. One of the most iconic moments of the Battle of Iwo Jima occurred on February 23, 1945, when a group of U.S. Marines raised the American flag atop Mount Suribachi, the island's highest point. The image of the flag raising, captured by Associated Press photographer Joe Rosenthal, became one of the most famous photographs of the war and a symbol of American resilience and sacrifice. However, the flag raising did not mark the end of the battle. Fighting continued for weeks as U.S. forces pushed northward to secure the rest of the island. The Japanese defenders, though outnumbered and outgunned, refused to surrender, forcing the Americans to clear each position in brutal close-quarters combat. The cost of victory. The Battle of Iwo Jima was one of the bloodiest battles in the history of the U.S. Marine Corps. Of the approximately 70,000 Marines who participated in the assault, nearly 7,000 were killed, and over 20,000 were wounded. The Japanese defenders, numbering around 21,000, fought almost to the last man, with fewer than 1,000 taken prisoner. The high casualty rate underscored the ferocity of the fighting and the determination of both sides. For the U.S., the capture of Iwo Jima was a significant strategic victory, providing a crucial base for air operations and a stepping stone for the eventual invasion of Japan. However, the cost in human lives was staggering, leading to intense debate about the necessity of the battle. Legacy of the battle. The Battle of Iwo Jima left an indelible mark on military history and American culture. The flag raising on Mount Suribachi became a powerful symbol of patriotism and sacrifice, immortalized in the Marine Corps War Memorial in Arlington, Virginia. The battle also highlighted the bravery and tenacity of the U.S. Marines, cementing their reputation as an elite fighting force. For Japan, the battle demonstrated the lengths to which its military would go to defend its territory, foreshadowing the fierce resistance that would be encountered during the planned invasion of the Japanese mainland. The high casualties on both sides also underscored the devastating human cost of the war in the Pacific. In the decades since the Battle, Iwo Jima has remained a place of reflection and remembrance. Annual commemorations honor the sacrifices of those who fought and died on the island, and the battle continues to be studied as a testament to the courage and resilience of soldiers in the face of unimaginable hardship. The Battle of Iwo Jima was a defining moment in World War II, showcasing the brutal realities of warfare and the extraordinary sacrifices made by those who fought. The capture of the island was a critical step in the Allied advance toward Japan, but it came at a tremendous cost. The legacy of Iwo Jima serves as a reminder of the courage and determination of the men who fought there, as well as the profound human toll of war. As we reflect on this pivotal battle, we honor the memory of those who gave their lives and recognize the enduring impact of their sacrifice on the course of history. The main objectives of the Battle of Iwo Jima, a strategic turning point in World War II. The Battle of Iwo Jima, fought between February 19 and March 26, 1945, was one of the most significant and brutal engagements of World War II. This pivotal battle pitted the United States Marine Corps against the Imperial Japanese Army on a small volcanic island in the Pacific Ocean. The battle resulted in heavy casualties on both sides, but its strategic importance to the Allied war effort cannot be overstated. The main objectives of the Battle of Iwo Jima were multifaceted, encompassing military, logistical, and psychological goals that would ultimately contribute to the Allied victory in the Pacific theater. Securing a strategic airbase. One of the primary objectives of the Battle of Iwo Jima was to capture the island and its airfields to provide a critical staging ground for Allied forces. Iwo Jima, located approximately 760 miles south of Tokyo, was strategically positioned along the flight path between the Mariana Islands and Japan. By securing the island, the United States aimed to establish a forward base for its long-range bombers, particularly the B-29 Superfortress, which was conducting extensive bombing campaigns against the Japanese mainland. The airfields on Iwo Jima would allow damaged bombers to make emergency landings, saving countless lives and aircraft. Additionally, the island could serve as a base for fighter escorts, which would provide protection for bombers during their missions over Japan. The capture of Iwo Jima was thus seen as a crucial step in intensifying the air war against Japan and bringing the conflict to a swift conclusion. Neutralizing a threat to Allied operations. Iwo Jima was not only a potential asset for the Allies but also a significant threat. The Japanese had heavily fortified the island, constructing an extensive network of tunnels, bunkers, and artillery positions. From Iwo Jima, Japanese forces could intercept and attack Allied aircraft, as well as launch raids on Allied positions in the Marianas. By capturing the island, the United States aimed to eliminate this threat and ensure the safety of its operations in the region. The Japanese military, under the command of General Tadamaki Kuribayashi, had transformed Iwo Jima into a formidable defensive stronghold. The rugged terrain, coupled with the elaborate underground fortifications, made the island a challenging target. However, the Allies recognized that neutralizing this threat was essential to maintaining air superiority and protecting their advancing forces. Psychological and symbolic significance. Beyond its military and logistical importance, the Battle of Iwo Jima held profound psychological and symbolic significance for both sides. For the United States, capturing the island would demonstrate the resolve and capability of American forces to strike at the heart of the Japanese Empire. The raising of the American flag on Mount Suribachi, captured in the iconic photograph by Joe Rosenthal, became a powerful symbol of hope and determination for the American public. For Japan, Iwo Jima represented a critical line of defense. The loss of the island would not only weaken their military position but also signal the inevitability of Allied victory. The Japanese defenders, aware of the island's importance, fought with extraordinary tenacity, often to the last man. Their fierce resistance underscored the challenges the Allies would face as they moved closer to Japan, paving the way for the invasion of Japan. The capture of Iwo Jima was also seen as a precursor to the planned invasion of the Japanese mainland, codenamed Operation Downfall. By securing the island, the Allies would gain a valuable staging area for troops, equipment, and supplies. The airfields on Iwo Jima would support reconnaissance missions, provide logistical support, and serve as a base for operations during the anticipated invasion, while the eventual use of atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki rendered a full-scale invasion unnecessary. the Battle of Iwo Jima played a critical role in shaping the final stages of the war. The lessons learned from the intense fighting on the island informed Allied strategies and highlighted the challenges of confronting a determined and resourceful enemy. The Battle of Iwo Jima was a defining moment in World War II, marked by extraordinary courage, sacrifice, and strategic significance. The main objectives of the battle: securing a strategic airbase, neutralizing a threat to Allied operations, achieving psychological and symbolic victories, and paving the way for the invasion of Japan, were all critical to the Allied war effort. The capture of Iwo Jima not only advanced the Allied cause but also demonstrated the high cost of victory in the Pacific theater. Today, the battle is remembered as a testament to the bravery of those who fought and a reminder of the sacrifices made to achieve peace. How did the Japanese defenses on Iwo Jima impact the U.S. Marines? The Battle of Iwo Jima, fought between February 19 and March 26, 1945, stands as one of the most brutal and iconic engagements of World War II. The small volcanic island, located roughly 660 miles south of Tokyo, was of immense strategic importance to both the United States and Japan. For the U.S., capturing Iwo Jima would provide a critical airbase for long-range bombers and a staging ground for the eventual invasion of Japan. For the Japanese, the island was a vital line of defense, and they were determined to hold it at all costs. The Japanese defenses on Iwo Jima were meticulously planned and executed, and their impact on the U.S. Marines was profound, resulting in heavy casualties, psychological strain, and a grueling battle of attrition. The Japanese defense strategy under the command of General Tadamaki Kurabayashi. The Japanese implemented a revolutionary defense strategy that diverged significantly from their previous tactics. Instead of relying on beachfront defenses and banzai charges, which had proven ineffective in earlier battles, Kurabayashi focused on creating a network of fortified positions, tunnels, and underground bunkers. The goal was to inflict maximum casualties on the invading forces and delay the U.S. advance for as long as possible. Kurabayashi's strategy was built around three key principles: in-depth defenses. The Japanese constructed a complex system of interconnected tunnels and caves that spanned the entire island. These tunnels allowed troops to move undetected and launch surprise attacks from multiple directions. The underground network also housed command centers, hospitals, and storage facilities, making it difficult for the U.S. to disrupt Japanese operations. Concealed positions, artillery, mortars, and machine guns were strategically placed in hidden positions, often camouflaged to blend into the rocky terrain. These positions were designed to provide overlapping fields of fire, ensuring that any advance by the Marines would be met with devastating crossfire. No retreat. Kurabayashi ordered his troops to fight to the death, emphasizing that there would be no retreat or surrender. This fanatical commitment to defense meant that the Japanese would continue to resist even after their positions were overrun, often emerging from hidden tunnels to attack from the rear. The impact on the U.S. Marines. The Japanese defenses had a profound impact on the U.S. Marines, shaping the course of the battle and leaving a lasting legacy on those who fought there. Heavy casualties. The Battle of Iwo Jima was one of the bloodiest in the history of the U.S. Marine Corps. Of the approximately 70,000 Marines who landed on the island, nearly 7,000 were killed, and over 20,000 were wounded. The Japanese defenses were so effective that the Marines often had to fight for every inch of ground, facing relentless machine gun fire, artillery barrages, and close-quarters combat. The dense network of tunnels and bunkers meant that even after a position was seemingly secured, Japanese soldiers could reappear and continue the fight. Psychological strain. The relentless nature of the combat took a heavy toll on the Marines' mental and emotional well-being. The constant threat of ambushes, the sight of fallen comrades, and the grueling conditions of the battlefield created an atmosphere of pervasive fear and exhaustion. Many Marines later described the battle as a nightmare, with the island's rugged terrain and oppressive volcanic ash adding to the sense of despair. Adaptation and innovation. Despite the challenges, the Marines demonstrated remarkable resilience and adaptability. They developed new tactics to counter the Japanese defenses, such as using flamethrowers and explosives to clear tunnels and bunkers. Naval and aerial bombardment played a crucial role in softening Japanese positions, although the extensive underground fortifications often rendered these efforts less effective than hoped. The Marines also relied heavily on teamwork and coordination, with small units working together to overcome entrenched enemy positions. Symbol of sacrifice. The Battle of Iwo Jima became a symbol of the sacrifices made by the U.S. military during World War II. The iconic photograph of Marines raising the American flag on Mount Suribachi captured the determination and bravery of those who fought on the island. However, the image also belied the immense cost of the battle, as the fighting continued for weeks after the flag raising. The high casualty rate and the ferocity of the Japanese defenses underscored the brutal reality of the Pacific War. The aftermath. The capture of Iwo Jima came at a tremendous cost, but it provided significant strategic benefits for the United States. The island's airfields were used to support bombing campaigns against Japan and as emergency landing sites for damaged aircraft. However, the battle also raised questions about the feasibility of invading the Japanese mainland, as the fanatical resistance on Iwo Jima suggested that future operations would be even more costly for the Japanese. The defense of Iwo Jima was a testament to their determination and willingness to sacrifice. Of the approximately 21,000 Japanese soldiers stationed on the island, only around 200 were taken prisoner. The rest died in combat or by suicide, fulfilling their commitment to fight to the last man. The Japanese defenses on Iwo Jima had a profound and far-reaching impact on the U.S. Marines. The battle tested their courage, endurance, and adaptability, leaving an indelible mark on the history of the Marine Corps. While the capture of Iwo Jima was a strategic victory for the United States, it came at a staggering human cost, serving as a stark reminder of the horrors of war. The legacy of Iwo Jima endures as a testament to the bravery and sacrifice of those who fought there, as well as a sobering reflection on the devastating consequences of conflict. The significance of the tunnels and bunkers on Iwo Jima. The Battle of Iwo Jima, fought between February 19 and March 26, 1945, was one of the most brutal and iconic engagements of World War II. The small volcanic island, located roughly halfway between Tokyo and the Mariana Islands, became a critical strategic objective for both the United States and Japan. While the battle is often remembered for the iconic photograph of U.S. Marines raising the American flag on Mount Suribachi, the true significance of the conflict lies beneath the surface, literally. The extensive network of tunnels and bunkers constructed by the Japanese forces on Iwo Jima played a pivotal role in shaping the course of the battle and underscored the broader tactical and psychological challenges of the Pacific War. The strategic importance of Iwo Jima. Iwo Jima's location made it a key target for the United States. Capturing the island would provide a crucial staging ground for American bombers conducting raids on the Japanese mainland. The island's airfields could serve as emergency landing sites for damaged B-29 superfortresses returning from missions over Japan, potentially saving thousands of American airmen. For Japan, Iwo Jima was part of the inner defensive ring protecting the homeland. Losing the island would bring the Allies one step closer to a direct invasion of Japan. Recognizing the island's strategic value, the Japanese military undertook an ambitious effort to fortify Iwo Jima. Under the command of Lieutenant General Tadamaki Korebayashi, the Japanese forces transformed the island into a formidable fortress. Unlike previous island defenses, which often relied on beachfront fortifications, Korebayashi adopted a radically different strategy. He ordered the construction of an elaborate underground network of tunnels, bunkers, and fortified positions designed to maximize the defensive capabilities of his forces. The underground fortress. The tunnels and bunkers on Iwo Jima were a marvel of military engineering. The Japanese dug over 11 miles, 18 kilometers, of tunnels, connecting hundreds of bunkers, command centers, ammunition depots, and living quarters. These tunnels were often carved directly into the island's volcanic rock, providing natural protection against artillery and aerial bombardment. The bunkers were reinforced with concrete and steel, making them nearly impervious to direct hits. The underground network allowed Japanese troops to move freely across the island without exposing themselves to enemy fire. It also enabled them to launch surprise attacks and quickly retreat to safety. Many of the bunkers were strategically positioned to provide overlapping fields of fire, creating deadly kill zones for advancing American forces. The tunnels also housed artillery pieces, mortars, and machine guns, which could be repositioned as needed to counter American advances. The impact on the battle. The tunnels and bunkers on Iwo Jima had a profound impact on the course of the battle. When U.S. forces landed on the island on February 19, 1945, they initially encountered little resistance. However, as they moved inland, they were met with devastating fire from hidden Japanese positions. The underground network allowed the Japanese to withstand the pre-invasion bombardment, which had been intended to soften their defenses. Instead of being destroyed, the Japanese forces emerged from their bunkers largely intact and ready to fight. The battle quickly devolved into a grueling and bloody struggle. American troops faced relentless attacks from concealed positions, often unable to see the enemy until it was too late. The tunnels allowed the Japanese to launch nighttime raids, infiltrate American lines, and harass supply routes. The fighting was characterized by close-quarters combat, with flamethrowers, grenades, and satchel charges becoming essential tools for clearing bunkers and tunnels. The tenacity of the Japanese defense, enabled by the underground fortifications, prolonged the battle far beyond initial American expectations. What was anticipated to be a quick victory turned into a 36-day slog, resulting in heavy casualties on both sides. Of the approximately 21,000 Japanese defenders, only around 200 survived. The U.S. suffered nearly 26,000 casualties, including 6,800 killed in action. Tactical and psychological significance. The tunnels and bunkers on Iwo Jima had both tactical and psychological significance. Tactically, they demonstrated the effectiveness of decentralized, underground defenses against a superior force. Suribachi's strategy forced the Americans to fight for every inch of ground, inflicting maximum casualties and delaying their advance. The battle highlighted the challenges of assaulting heavily fortified positions and influenced Allied planning for future operations, including the anticipated invasion of Japan. Psychologically, the tunnels and bunkers symbolized the determination and resilience of the Japanese forces. Despite being outnumbered and outgunned, the defenders of Iwo Jima fought with extraordinary tenacity, often to the death. Their willingness to endure unimaginable hardships and sacrifice themselves for their cause left a lasting impression on the American troops who fought there. The battle also underscored the fanatical resistance that the Allies could expect as they moved closer to Japan, contributing to the decision to use atomic bombs to end the war. Legacy of the tunnels and bunkers. Today, the tunnels and bunkers on Iwo Jima stand as a testament to the ingenuity and determination of the Japanese defenders. They also serve as a somber reminder of the human cost of war. The island, now officially known as Kyoto, is largely uninhabited and serves as a military base for the Japanese self-defense forces. The tunnels and bunkers, many of which remain intact, are a popular destination for historians, veterans, and tourists seeking to understand the battle's significance. The legacy of the tunnels and bunkers extends beyond Iwo Jima. They represent a turning point in the Pacific War, illustrating the challenges of overcoming a deeply entrenched and determined enemy. The lessons learned from the battle influenced military tactics and strategy in the decades that followed, shaping the way modern armies approach fortified defenses. In conclusion, the tunnels and bunkers on Iwo Jima were far more than mere fortifications. They were the backbone of a defensive strategy that transformed a small volcanic island into a symbol of resistance. Their significance lies not only in their tactical impact but also in their enduring legacy as a reminder of the sacrifices made during one of the most pivotal battles of World War II. How did the U.S. Navy's preliminary bombardment affect the battle? The U.S. Navy's preliminary bombardment has long been a critical component of American military strategy, particularly during amphibious assaults in World War II. These bombardments, which involved the use of naval artillery to soften enemy defenses before ground troops landed, played a pivotal role in shaping the outcomes of key battles. One of the most notable examples of this strategy in action was during the Battle of Iwo Jima in 1945. The effectiveness, or perceived ineffectiveness, of the U.S. Navy's preliminary bombardment during this battle has been the subject of extensive analysis and debate. This article explores how the U.S. Navy's preliminary bombardment affected the Battle of Iwo Jima and its broader implications for military tactics. The purpose of preliminary bombardment. Preliminary bombardment serves several key purposes in amphibious operations. First, it aims to destroy or neutralize enemy fortifications, artillery positions, and communication lines. Second, it seeks to demoralize enemy troops and disrupt their ability to organize a cohesive defense. Finally, it provides cover for incoming ground forces, reducing the risk of heavy casualties during the initial landing phase. In theory, a well-executed bombardment should significantly weaken the enemy's defensive capabilities, making it easier for ground troops to secure a beachhead and advance inland. The Battle of Iwo Jima, a case study. The Battle of Iwo Jima, fought between February 19 and March 26, 1945, was one of the bloodiest and most iconic battles of World War II. The island, strategically located roughly halfway between the Mariana Islands and Japan, was a critical objective for the United States. Its capture would provide a staging area for air raids on the Japanese mainland and an emergency landing site for damaged bombers. In preparation for the invasion, the U.S. Navy conducted a 3-day preliminary bombardment of Iwo Jima, beginning on February 16, 1945. The bombardment involved a fleet of battleships, cruisers, and destroyers, which fired thousands of shells at the island. Additionally, carrier-based aircraft dropped bombs and strafed enemy positions. On paper, this seemed like a formidable display of firepower. However, the results were mixed, and the bombardment's effectiveness has been widely debated. The effectiveness of the bombardment. Despite the intensity of the bombardment, it failed to achieve its primary objectives. The Japanese defenders, under the command of Lieutenant General Tadamaki Kurabayashi, had constructed an extensive network of underground tunnels, bunkers, and fortified positions. These defenses were largely impervious to naval artillery and aerial bombing. As a result, much of the bombardment inflicted only superficial damage on the island's surface, leaving the Japanese defenses largely intact. One of the key shortcomings of the bombardment was its inability to target the Japanese forces effectively. The Navy's firepower was concentrated on visible surface structures, such as buildings and gun emplacements, but failed to penetrate the deeply buried fortifications. Additionally, the bombardment was hampered by poor weather conditions and limited intelligence about the exact locations of enemy positions. As a result, many of the shells and bombs missed their intended targets. The impact on the battle. The limited effectiveness of the preliminary bombardment had significant consequences for the U.S. Marines who landed on Iwo Jima. Instead of encountering a weakened and disorganized enemy, they faced a well-prepared and determined Japanese force. The Marines were met with intense resistance from the moment they hit the beaches, suffering heavy casualties in the early stages of the battle. The fighting was brutal and protracted, with the U.S. forces advancing slowly and at great cost. The failure of the bombardment to neutralize Japanese defenses also meant that the Marines had to rely heavily on close-quarters combat, flamethrowers, and explosives to clear enemy positions. This type of fighting was extremely hazardous and resulted in high casualty rates on both sides. The battle ultimately lasted for 36 days, with nearly 7,000 U.S. Marines killed and over 19,000 wounded. Japanese losses were even more severe, with only a few hundred of the 21,000 defenders surviving. Lessons learned and broader implications. The Battle of Iwo Jima highlighted both the strengths and limitations of preliminary naval bombardment. While the bombardment demonstrated the U.S. Navy's ability to deliver massive firepower, it also revealed the challenges of targeting well-entrenched and concealed enemy positions. The battle underscored the importance of accurate intelligence, precision targeting, and the need for sustained bombardment over a longer period to achieve meaningful results. In the aftermath of Iwo Jima, the U.S. military made adjustments to its bombardment strategies. For example, during the subsequent invasion of Okinawa, the Navy conducted a more prolonged and intensive bombardment, lasting for several weeks. This approach proved more effective in degrading Japanese defenses and reducing casualties during the initial landing phase. The U.S. Navy's preliminary bombardment during the Battle of Iwo Jima had a profound impact on the course of the battle, though not in the way military planners had hoped. While the bombardment demonstrated the destructive potential of naval firepower, its inability to neutralize deeply entrenched Japanese defenses led to a protracted and costly battle for U.S. forces. The lessons learned from Iwo Jima influenced future military operations, emphasizing the need for more precise and sustained bombardment to achieve strategic objectives. Ultimately, the battle serves as a reminder of the complexities of warfare and the importance of adapting tactics to the realities of the battlefield. The role of kamikaze pilots during the Battle of Iwo Jima. The Battle of Iwo Jima, fought between February 19 and March 26, 1945, was one of the most brutal and significant engagements of World War II in the Pacific Theater. The battle pitted the United States Marine Corps against the Imperial Japanese Army for control of the strategically located island of Iwo Jima. While the battle is often remembered for the iconic photograph of U.S. Marines raising the American flag on Mount Suribachi, it also marked a critical moment in the use of kamikaze tactics by Japanese forces. Kamikaze pilots, who carried out suicide attacks by deliberately crashing their planes into enemy ships, played a notable role in the broader context of the battle, reflecting Japan's desperate measures to counter the overwhelming military might of the Allied forces. The emergence of kamikaze tactics. The concept of kamikaze, or divine wind, was rooted in Japan's historical and cultural context. The term originally referred to a typhoon that saved Japan from a Mongol invasion in the 13th century. During World War II, the Japanese military revived the idea as a last-ditch effort to turn the tide of the war. By late 1944, Japan was facing severe shortages of experienced pilots, aircraft, and fuel. Conventional tactics were proving ineffective against the advancing Allied forces, which had superior numbers, technology, and resources. In this dire situation, the Japanese military leadership turned to kamikaze attacks as a way to inflict maximum damage with minimal resources. Kamikaze pilots, often young and poorly trained, volunteered for these suicide missions out of a sense of duty, honor, and loyalty to the emperor. Their attacks were designed to destroy enemy ships, disrupt naval operations, and demoralize Allied forces. The first organized kamikaze missions began during the Battle of Leyte Gulf in October 1944, and the tactic quickly became a hallmark of Japan's defensive strategy. Kamikaze operations during the Battle of Iwo Jima. The Battle of Iwo Jima occurred at a critical juncture in the Pacific War. The island, located roughly halfway between the Mariana Islands and Japan, was a key strategic objective for the United States. Its capture would provide a vital base for American bombers conducting raids on the Japanese mainland and a safe haven for damaged aircraft returning from missions. Recognizing the island's importance, the Japanese military fortified Iwo Jima with an extensive network of tunnels, bunkers, and artillery positions. However, with the U.S. Navy's overwhelming naval and air superiority, Japan's ability to defend the island through conventional means was limited. Kamikaze attacks were not a central feature of the ground battle on Iwo Jima itself, as the fighting primarily involved infantry and artillery engagements. However, kamikaze pilots played a significant role in the broader naval and air operations surrounding the battle. The U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet, which provided support for the amphibious assault on Iwo Jima, became a prime target for Japanese kamikaze units. These suicide attacks aimed to weaken the American fleet, disrupt supply lines, and reduce the effectiveness of naval bombardment and air support for the Marines on the ground. During the battle, Japanese kamikaze pilots launched several attacks against U.S. ships stationed near Iwo Jima. While the exact number of kamikaze sorties during the battle is difficult to determine, these missions caused considerable damage and casualties. For example, on February 21, 1945, just 2 days after the initial landing, a kamikaze attack struck the USS Saratoga, a U.S. aircraft carrier, killing 123 crew members and injuring 192. The carrier was forced to withdraw for repairs, temporarily reducing the U.S. Navy's air support capabilities. Another kamikaze attack on the same day targeted the escort carrier USS Bismarck C, sinking the ship and resulting in the loss of 318 lives. The impact of kamikaze attacks. The kamikaze attacks during the Battle of Iwo Jima highlighted the effectiveness and limitations of this tactic. On one hand, kamikaze missions demonstrated the willingness of Japanese pilots to sacrifice their lives for their country, embodying the spirit of Bushido, the way of the warrior. These attacks inflicted significant damage on Allied ships, causing both material losses and psychological strain on American forces. The unpredictability and sheer determination of kamikaze pilots made them a formidable threat, even in the face of advanced anti-aircraft defenses and fighter patrols. On the other hand, kamikaze tactics were ultimately unable to alter the outcome of the Battle of Iwo Jima or the broader war. Despite their bravery and sacrifice, kamikaze pilots faced overwhelming odds. The U.S. Navy's superior numbers, advanced radar systems, and coordinated defensive measures minimized the impact of these attacks. Moreover, the loss of experienced pilots and aircraft further weakened Japan's already strained military capabilities. The legacy of kamikaze pilots. The role of kamikaze pilots during the Battle of Iwo Jima remains a poignant and controversial aspect of World War II history. For many, these pilots symbolize the extreme measures taken by Japan in its fight against an increasingly dominant enemy. Their actions reflect the desperation and determination of a nation facing imminent defeat, as well as the cultural and ideological forces that drove young men to sacrifice their lives for their country. At the same time, the kamikaze tactic raises ethical and strategic questions about the use of suicide attacks in warfare. While kamikaze missions caused significant damage, they also underscored the futility of Japan's efforts to resist the Allied advance. The Battle of Iwo Jima ultimately ended in a decisive American victory, with the island serving as a critical base for the final stages of the Pacific War. In the decades since World War II, the legacy of kamikaze pilots has been the subject of extensive analysis and debate. For some, they are remembered as heroes who gave their lives for their nation. For others, they are seen as victims of a militaristic regime that exploited their loyalty and idealism. Regardless of perspective, the story of kamikaze pilots during the Battle of Iwo Jima serves as a powerful reminder of the human cost of war and the complex motivations that drive individuals in times of conflict. The kamikaze pilots who participated in the Battle of Iwo Jima played a significant, albeit tragic, role in one of the most iconic battles of World War II. Their suicide attacks against U.S. naval forces demonstrated the lengths to which Japan was willing to go in its struggle against the Allied powers. While these missions inflicted considerable damage, they were unable to change the course of the battle or the war. The legacy of the kamikaze pilots endures as a testament to the extreme measures taken during wartime and the profound sacrifices made by those caught in the turmoil of global conflict.